Hi everyone, it's Professor Hall. Welcome to English 240, Literature and Identity. I wanted to take this first week to walk you through our course. So here is our home page. I just clicked course home to get here. I have another video for you that I've already sent out about how to use Brightspace, so I'm not going to walk through that. You can watch that video if you need to know a little bit about how to navigate things in Brightspace. But our class here, we have work to do on the left, and we also have the calendar. So if you're a person who gets kind of anxious and you want to know what's coming up, or if you're a person who likes to make sure you note deadlines and put them in your own calendar or planner, the whole course is open for you from day one, so you can see everything today, or starting last week actually. The announcements are here, my contact info, some stuff about our course, using Brightspace, as I said, and a bit about me. You do have to, as you've probably figured out if you're watching this video, you do have to go into Brightspace itself through your app or your desktop or laptop to see the videos. You can't see them through your school email, even though they will, the announcements will come to your school email, so you'll be getting them as well in that place. So let's go into our content and we'll talk a little bit about our books. The overview will be up at the top for you. As I'm setting this up, we haven't quite started yet, but it will be there, and it'll have your syllabus and a description of the course. And then the books, we have 6 of them. Sounds like a lot, but the first one's very short, and the last one is a graphic novel. So they're not quite as much to read as some of the ones in the middle. I kind of tried to pair them in groups of 2. So through the whole course, because this is women's literature and its larger scope is literature and identity, we're looking at women's identity, we're looking at feminism, and we're looking at things like gender roles and expectations, right? That's kind of like our broad scope. For our pairs of books, Like Water for Chocolate is written by Laura Esquivel. She is a Mexican author. This is a really interesting book that's an example of magical realism, and also the story of one woman who kind of feels trapped by her family system and her culture and struggles with finding her own identity both within that culture and then kind of breaking away from it. And that's kind of a similar theme going on in our second book as well. So we're going to read Like Water for Chocolate over the course of 3 weeks. It is a shorter book, but there are some other things that I know we need to consider our first week, and we're just getting started, and I don't want to throw too much at you. So we'll be doing it over the course of 4 weeks. Its structure is set up with 1 chapter for each month, although it covers a long span of time. So we go from year to year throughout the chapters, although the chapters are labeled as different months in those years, if that makes sense. You'll figure it out. And then also there are recipes as well that kind of coincide with what's going on in the chapter and how the main character is feeling. So it's really interesting. The next book is Joy Luck Club, written by Amy Tan, who is a Chinese American author. And again, here we actually have interlocking stories of women and their mothers, or women and their daughters, however you want to put it, mothers and daughters, I'll put it that way. And we see how each woman is struggling with her identity, either in China or America, or sometimes both, and how mothers and daughters interact, and how sometimes those relationships can be positive, sometimes they can be not so healthy. And so I think it's a really interesting book because we have a lot of diversity of perspectives within one book. And I really love that it shows women in all different situations and really how we interact with each other, especially in our families. The first book, Like Water for Chocolate, does as well. We see a mother and her 3 daughters. But this, I think, gives a lot of rich characterization and really an in-depth look at each character, even in her short chapter that we this little glance of time, or a snapshot of time in which we see her. So we'll be spending 3 weeks there as well. Then we're moving on to our second pair, and here we have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, a book from the 1940s. This pair of books, I wanted to move away from talking about women in family systems and look instead a little bit more at sex and power dynamics, and also sexual manipulation and sexuality in general. So Rebecca is the story of a woman who is unnamed in her book. Her name is not Rebecca. She falls in love with and marries a man whose first wife was named Rebecca, and Rebecca has since passed away, and so the ghost of Rebecca kind of haunts this woman, and she is very young. The man she's married is quite a bit older, and so we see some interesting power dynamics there, and I don't want to give any more away because it's a great book, and I feel like if I give more away, I'll spoil it. But it's a little bit, has some gothic tones in there, and I think it's an interesting read, and I hope you enjoy it. If you had Victorian literature with me last semester, I usually pair Rebecca and Jane Eyre together because they're very, very similar. So if you did read that book, or if you didn't take it with me but you've read that book anyway, you can look for that comparison and look for similar kind of setup and structure and themes. My Dark Vanessa is the book that I paired with Rebecca. This book features a very young girl who has been has an inappropriate relationship with her teacher, and I guess I don't really want to phrase it that way, but I sort of have to in terms of YouTube rules without getting this video taken down. So it's a high school girl whose teacher has an inappropriate relationship with her. I guess that's the best way that I can put it. Now, I will tell you that we have a lot of similar themes to Rebecca. Even though the woman in Rebecca is of age, she is very young and innocent, and the man that she has married has a lot of secrets, and he's older and very wealthy, right? Here, for obvious reasons, we have a teacher, we have different people of different ages. The book was written recently and published recently. It is a bit graphic at times, and it does contain scenes of sexual assault and themes of child abuse and exploitation, as I've put up here. If you find that triggering, you can read the alternate book, which I'll talk about in a moment. But if you're able to read this book, I do think that it is an interesting look at someone telling their own story, and then we're seeing her in the present time, and then also flashbacks to when she was 15, 16 years old, and she's still kind of dealing with her trauma and what happened to her, and we also kind of see how she's reconciling it and sort of trying to forge her identity after having some of these experiences. So to me, it's a really interesting book in terms of her journey as a woman, and some of the things about, what happens to someone's identity and sexuality when things like this have happened to them, and how that affects them as adults later in life, which is something I don't think is talked about too often. However, if that's triggering for you, we do have an alternate book, which is Anne of Green Gables. Now, why did you pick this book, Megan? I picked it because it's about the nicest, sweetest, total opposite from my Dark Vanessa that you could get. And I also think what's interesting to me about Anne of Green Gables is that when we talk about feminism, I think a lot of people have this idea that it's like, even if they're not seeing it from a negative point of view, it's like strong, powerful women who, go out and conquer the world, and they and they do that through kind of like being tough, right? And Anne of Green Gables to me is a book about a girl growing up and then later becoming a young woman through the series, where she is very much a feminist. There's even parts in there where they are trying to work for the vote for women, but she's very, very, traditionally feminine and enjoys like stories and imaginative play, really, and poetry and flowery, flowers and having tea parties and things like that. And so I think that it's a really good example that feminism doesn't have to look like one thing, and that that identity and gender expectations, you can kind of fit into traditional gender norms and still be a feminist. I get that that's something that I don't think we see in like contemporary literature. So it's interesting to me that this book is written in like 1902 and it's still there. I mean, you can read it and just enjoy it and not see those things. But if you've read it before, you might be like, what are you talking about? But if you read it from that lens and that point of view, it's quite interesting. So our last pair, I have The Handmaid's Tale and Persepolis. So these two books were looking at the idea of being a woman and, again, forming identity and looking at gender expectations and gender roles with societal oppression and with this idea of rebellion. So I kind of tried to have stories where we have like family systems as a focus, and then individual relationships, romantic relationships as a focus, and then societal conflict as a focus, and kind of pair them up in that way. The Handmaid's Tale, if you don't know, Margaret Atwood wrote this book as kind of a response to the Iranian Revolution in the 1970s to say, like, if this type of a revolution took place in the United States and Canada, what would that, because she's a Canadian author, what would that look like? And this was sort of her imagining of what that would look like. And so we have a woman who we don't know her real name, but in the book she's Offred, and her journey through this dystopian landscape as she is called upon to bear a child for a couple when her own child has been taken away. That's the sort of overview of her story, again, without getting into too many details. Persepolis is a personal account of one woman's journey as a child, and then you can see here child in Persepolis 1 and a teenager and young woman in Persepolis 2. You're reading the complete Persepolis, so you'll be seeing both parts. And so she is really a very strong personality, and her parents believe that because of some of her beliefs and some of the things they've taught her, and the fact that she is in the more traditional sense a feminist, that she's kind of she's being put in danger because of the Iranian Revolution and the things that are happening there. So she's telling her story of living in Iran, and then later Austria, and then I think eventually France. And it's a really fascinating story, and I love that it's told in a graphic form so we can literally see her life. So once we complete those books, you'll have a final project in which basically you'll be doing a literary analysis comparing if I can click on it here. Oh, I already have it open. There, it's all right. You're going to choose two of those books, and you can compare the themes that I just talked about. If you see another theme you like to talk about, or if you read Anne of Green Gables instead of My Dark Vanessa, and you'd like to talk about that book and compare it to another, you can definitely do that too. We will have assignments and discussions primarily for our purposes of grading. You can get discussions in this course tools discussions. You can look at your assignments in this assignments, and it'll tell you if you've submitted it. So if you're not sure, go back in and just try to see if you have, you can make sure that you have submitted it. So the one thing to note is that everything that you turn in has a due date and then also an end date. The end date is the date after which you will not be able to access it. So you can turn things in a bit late, but not after the end date, if that makes sense. If you have a major problem, please just make sure you contact me and let me know. You can see your grades at any point as well through the grades app and or through the grades thing here, so you'll be able to see how many points were available. This may not be accurate right now, so but points available, points that you got, your grade, and then if I commented, you can click here to read those comments. So yes, I'm very, very excited. A couple of these books are the first time that I've used them in a class, so I'm really excited to talk about them. I can't wait to see your thoughts, and I hope you enjoy the course. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks, everybody.